My name's Janet Field and I farm on the Murray River in New South Wales, Australia. I'm lucky enough to have a 34-hectare ephemeral wetland on my property. It has a canopy of red gums, an understory of diverse ground covers and grasses. Without knowing a thing about managing a wetland, when we bought the farm in 1980, we used to run irrigation drainage into it, which kept it relatively healthy. And then we leased the farm while we built our house, and the lessees put no water into it at all. So after 4 or 5 years, the wetland was looking very sick indeed, and many of the trees were almost leafless. Our district is very prone to salinity and rising water tables, and wetlands, being in the lowest part of the landscape, are very susceptible. We were worried. We didn't know what to do to restore health. My husband thought we might raise the salinity and kill the trees if we watered them, but I believed that a watering would push the salt down and the wetland needed water first and foremost. I'd also learned by then that a red gum needs to stand in water over late winter and spring for about 8 weeks, most years, for good health, and that wetlands need to have a wetting and a drying cycle. We both believed very strongly that good land management is not just an economic decision. So in 1994, using our own irrigation water, in those days it was relatively inexpensive and there was more of it, we gave the wetland a big drink and monitored the results closely. Within just 3 weeks, the gums began to burst into leaf, and frogs, turtles and water birds abounded. Water ribbons and wetland grasses grew, and although the water table spiked at a high level, it fell back to low levels when the water soaked away. After that, we installed pipes and stops, and the wetland was filled on 2 or 3 more occasions, and we got better and better at doing it. The last time my son and I filled it, it was in spring 2003, shortly after my husband Dennis's death. But now, 5 years later, our seasons have turned desperately dry. This year we've had a mere 6 inches of rain, and we're deep in drought. The wetland is seriously water deficient, and my assessment is that without the water they're getting now, most of these trees would die in the next 3 to 5 years. It's now become impossible for us to give our own environmental flow. We've had no irrigation water for 2 years, and I think it may be several more years before we get much at all. And in addition, the value of the water has increased exponentially. Economically, it will be much harder, though perhaps not impossible, to sacrifice that income for the wetland. So this wonderful private property watering program, operated by the New South Wales Murray Wetland Working Group, is terribly important, and I'm filled with joy and gratitude that our wetland is benefiting from it. I've been allocated up to 180 megalitres. Perhaps we should ask, why are wetlands worth saving? Well, there are some good reasons. First, I think because a wetland is among the most diverse systems in nature. When Charles Darwin was writing On the Origin of the Species in 1859, he did a little desktop study of his own. And this is what he wrote. I took in February 3 tablespoonfuls of mud from 3 different points beneath the water on the edge of a little pond. This mud, when it was dry, weighed only 6 3/4 ounces. I kept it covered up in my study for 6 months, pulling up and counting each plant as it grew. The plants were of many kinds and were altogether 537 in number, and yet the viscid mud was all contained in a breakfast cup. That sort of biodiversity is just astounding. Because the plants and animals that depend on a wetland are innately valuable in themselves, we must keep wetlands going, because these plants and animals are regrettably increasingly rare. The large and beautiful southern bell frog used to be here in abundance on this place, but I haven't heard it for a long time. The other reason for looking after wetlands is you need a healthy, diverse environment to produce healthy food, and wetlands are part of that health and diversity. A farm's got to be more than a food-producing factory. You've got to be able to walk around parts of your farm and feel spiritually renewed. And of course, we don't really own the environment in the truest sense. We are stewards, so we're really obliged to care for what we're privileged to have in our hands. What impresses me about the Wetland Working Group is that it's not a victim of paralysis by analysis. Since its inception, it's got out there and achieved real, practical, profoundly valuable outcomes, and I'm overjoyed by the results here already. We've been pumping for a little over a week now, and within 2 days, 3 species of frogs started croaking and spawning. Admittedly, not as prolific as they were, but surprising given the length of the drought. And there are large numbers of ducks, ibis, spoonbill, an emu and his chick have arrived, and after only a week, I'm noticing that although no new leaves have come on the trees, the leaves that are on the trees are shinier and healthier looking. The canopies seem fuller and less depleted. I believe wetlands will be jeopardised by the water scarcity that global warming may bring. The Wetland Working Group has over time created water for dry wetlands like mine by installing regulators and saving water at sites that have been permanently drowned by irrigation drainage. These sorts of innovative programs will become even more important over the coming decades and deserve government support. Without them, we risk losing our beautiful and valuable wetland assets.